World War II, a global calamity that changed the course of history forever, causing an unprecedented loss of life and altering geopolitical landscapes. An unseen catastrophe that was brewing in the backdrop of global politics and economic turmoil. The seeds of this cataclysm were sown in the aftermath of the First World War, with the signing of the Treaty of Versailles. This treaty, designed to establish a lasting peace, ironically planted the seeds of a far greater conflict. It imposed heavy reparations on Germany, crippling its economy and stirring a deep sense of resentment among its citizens. This resentment, coupled with the global economic depression of the 1930s, created an ideal breeding ground for radical ideologies. In Germany, a charismatic speaker named Adolf Hitler capitalized on this discontent, promising to restore Germany to its former glory. Hitler's National Socialist or Nazi Party rose to power, promoting a dangerous ideology of racial superiority and territorial expansionism. Fascism, as this ideology came to be known, wasn't confined to Germany alone. In Italy, Benito Mussolini had already established a fascist regime with dreams of resurrecting the Roman Empire. Meanwhile, far to the east, another storm was brewing. The Empire of Japan, under the rule of Emperor Hirohito, was pursuing an aggressive policy of expansion in East Asia. Driven by the need for natural resources and the desire to establish itself as a global power, Japan invaded Manchuria in 1931, marking the first act of aggression of what would become World War II. This triad of aggression, Germany in Europe, Italy in the Mediterranean, and Japan in East Asia, created a volatile mix of tension and fear. The world watched on, hoping for peace but preparing for the worst. Thus, the stage was set for a conflict that would engulf the entire globe. The spark that ignited World War II was the German invasion of Poland in September 1939. This was the start of a 6-year-long nightmare. With the fall of Poland, Germany under Adolf Hitler's regime had set a dangerous precedent of unchecked aggression. As the war machine moved forward, the next victim was France. The German Blitzkrieg, or Lightning War, overpowered the French defenses in a matter of weeks. Despite valiant efforts by the French and British forces, France fell to the Nazis in June 1940. This marked a dark period in French history, as the Vichy regime collaborated with the Nazi occupiers. Meanwhile, across the English Channel, Britain stood as the last bastion of resistance in Western Europe. The Battle of Britain saw the Royal Air Force pitted against the German Luftwaffe in a desperate struggle for air supremacy. The British, despite being outnumbered, held their ground, proving to the world that Hitler's forces were not invincible. Simultaneously, in Nazi-occupied territories, the Holocaust began. This was one of the darkest chapters in human history, where 6 million Jews were systematically murdered. Jews, along with other groups deemed undesirable by the Nazis, were rounded up, forced into ghettos, and then transported to concentration and extermination camps. The scale and brutality of these atrocities were unimaginable, revealing the depths of human cruelty. On the other side of the globe, the Axis powers, including Japan, were also making aggressive moves. The Japanese invasion of China and Southeast Asia had set the stage for a broader conflict in the Pacific. World War II was not just a conflict of nations, but also a clash of ideologies. Democracy and freedom were pitted against totalitarianism and oppression. The world was indeed at war, not just on the battlefield, but in the hearts and minds of its people. The world watched in horror as Axis powers spread their reign of terror. But this was just the beginning. The full scale and complexity of this global conflict were yet to reveal themselves. The world was at war, and the stakes could not have been higher. 1941 marked a significant turning point in the war, with the entry of the United States following the attack on Pearl Harbor. As we delve deeper into the annals of World War II, the middle years emerge as a period of momentous events, a time when the tide of war began to shift. One of the key events that marked a turning point was the Battle of Stalingrad. This titanic struggle between the forces of Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, from the late summer of 1942 to February 1943, was one of the deadliest battles in the history of warfare. The Soviets, defending their city with a ferocity born of desperation, eventually turned the tables on the invaders, encircling and capturing an entire German army. The Battle of Stalingrad marked the end of Germany's advances into Eastern Europe and the beginning of a series of Soviet victories. Simultaneously, on the African front, the North Africa Campaign was unfolding. From 1940 to 1943, this multifaceted conflict saw the Axis powers of Germany and Italy pitted against the Allies, primarily Great Britain and the United States. The campaign culminated in the decisive Second Battle of El Alamein, marking a significant turning point in favor of the Allies. However, it was the use of atomic weaponry that truly marked the beginning of the end. In August 1945, the United States dropped 2 atomic bombs on the Japanese cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The devastation was unimaginable, the human cost incalculable. This unprecedented show of force brought about Japan's surrender, marking the end of World War II. These middle years of the war, marked by significant battles and the introduction of nuclear warfare, were pivotal in shaping the course of history. It was a time when the tide of war began to turn, but it did not come without a price. The tide of war was turning, but at a great cost. 1945 witnessed the culmination of World War II with the total defeat of the Axis powers. As the year 1944 drew to a close, the fate of the Axis powers hung in the balance. The D-Day invasion, a monumental joint effort by the Allied forces, had successfully breached the impregnable walls of Hitler's fortress Europe. This operation, launched on the 6th of June, was a turning point in the war, a demonstration of the indomitable spirit of the Allied forces and a testament to their strategic brilliance. The invasion paved the way for the Allies to march towards Berlin, Hitler's stronghold. The fall of Berlin was the decisive moment in the European theater of war. The city fell to the Soviet forces, marking the capitulation of Nazi Germany. The once invincible Third Reich was now in ruins, its architect Adolf Hitler dead by his own hand. Meanwhile, halfway across the world, the war still raged on. Japan, the last bastion of the Axis powers, remained defiant even as the Allies closed in. But the tide of war had irrevocably turned. The dropping of 2 atomic bombs on the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945 marked the dawn of the nuclear age and the end of Japan's resistance. Emperor Hirohito, in an unprecedented move, announced the surrender of Japan on the 15th of August, marking the official end of World War II. The cost of this 6-year-long global conflict was staggering. Millions of lives were lost, cities lay in ruins, economies were shattered, and societies were forever scarred by the horrors of war. The aftermath of the war led to a total restructuring of the world order, giving rise to the Cold War, the formation of the United Nations, and the decolonization of Africa and Asia. The war was over, but the world was forever changed. In the aftermath of World War II, the world was left to grapple with the consequences and to learn from its lessons. The immediate aftermath of the war was a period of great upheaval and change. Nations were left in ruins, populations were displaced, and the global power structure was significantly altered. This chaos and instability necessitated the creation of a new international body, an organization that would strive to maintain global peace and security. Thus, the United Nations was born. Its establishment marked a significant shift in global politics, a move towards collective security and international cooperation. Alongside the establishment of the United Nations, the world witnessed the start of the Cold War. This was a prolonged state of political and military tension between the Western Bloc, led by the United States, and the Eastern Bloc, led by the Soviet Union. Although there were no large-scale fighting directly between the two superpowers, the Cold War was marked by a series of proxy wars, nuclear arms race, and ideological conflict. This period highlighted the global ramifications of political ideologies and the potential dangers of unchecked power. Parallel to these developments, the aftermath of World War II also saw the beginning of a massive process of decolonization, particularly in Africa and Asia. The war had weakened the European colonial powers, and the spirit of nationalism was sweeping across the colonies. This led to a wave of independence movements and the birth of new nations. This process reshaped the political map of the world and signaled the end of colonial imperialism. World War II was a testament to the horrors of war and a reminder of the need for peace. The lessons learned were hard and came at a great cost. They served as a stark reminder that peace is not just the absence of war, it requires concerted efforts to foster understanding, cooperation, and respect among nations. These lessons from history should guide us as we navigate the complexities of the modern world, reminding us of our shared humanity and the urgency of maintaining peace. World War II, a 6-year-long global conflict, forever altered the course of history. This monumental event, sparked by a complex web of political tensions and economic instability, unfolded across continents, bringing widespread devastation and loss. Through key battles such as the Battle of Stalingrad and the D-Day invasion, the tide of war was dramatically turned, leading ultimately to the downfall of the Axis powers. The aftermath of the war was no less momentous. It reshaped global politics, spurred technological innovations, and brought about the start of the Cold War. Yet it also gave birth to the United Nations, a beacon of hope for maintaining world peace. From the ashes of World War II, we've seen a world striving to learn from its past, to prevent such global conflict from happening again. Remember to subscribe for more intriguing dives into history. Together, we learn from the past to shape a better future.